If getting the woman of your dreams is going to work, it's going to be because of you. Pete, who doesn't want to be a gender, how can you not want to be a gender? Like, it's insanity. My name's Gavin Lanstop. Love listening to Jordan Peterson. Tell me what you think of this.
Well, there's certainly no shortage of evidence for reprehensible sexual behavior on the part of people who can use power to get away with it. So that's not so good. The Me Too movement, I suspect it probably did some good things and some terrible things. So in university campuses, for example, we're moving towards a preponderance of evidence model. I'm not very happy with that model. I think that's a very big mistake. The presumption of innocence is nothing short of a miracle, and we abandon it at our extreme peril.
Bad things happen to good people. We all know that. But I have never, ever met a successful victim. Hey, things happen to us all. But the fact that we camp down and say it's not my fault. See, one of the key points in the transition in a masculine journey from boy to man is that we take responsibility for everything. The good, the bad, the ugly. Just by saying, hey, it's okay for me to be a victim, I'm going to stay here, it's not my fault, will not get you anywhere. Even though bad things may have happened to you, it's still not going to help you.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
The thing I love about that, he handled it like a gentleman. I love that.
And I love what you just said, that in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. And that went viral. That made you very famous. Why do you think that sparked such a reaction?
Well, because I think that what I was saying was self-evidently true, but not expressed very well.
The thing is, you're going to offend people. Listen, the way not to offend anyone, say nothing, do nothing, and be nothing. So when you're on your purpose and your mission, not everyone's going to agree with you. But if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you're here for, you'll be swayed by people like that young lady.
When you're discussing something that needs to be discussed, everybody's actually rather upset about it. You know, if you're actually talking about something important, right? Because why talk otherwise, unless you're just shooting the breeze? But if there's an issue at hand that has to be discussed, then people are already upset and they have different viewpoints. And the offensiveness in some sense is built into that. And you know that because if you have a family, if you have a wife, if you have an intimate relationship, and you're discussing something that's difficult, the probability that you're not going to offend each other if you're actually having the conversation is zero. And if you have a problem, then when you think you're going to offend people.
And that's a really good point, because there's a difference between being hurt and then getting angry, or being aggressive and not knowing why. See, when inside the DNA of every man's a warrior. Okay, so we've got to know what we're standing for, what we believe. But when you're untrained, your aggression or assertiveness even, people are offended at people being assertive these days. When your assertiveness is taken as aggressive, but see, when you're a warrior, you can be aggressive and assertive and be a gentleman at the same time.
You're obviously not an American. We love to not think. But you know, I used to do a show called Politically Incorrect back in the 90s, and thank you. Oh, the 90s, we remember them. And so I was always asked, what is your definition of political correctness? And I had to come up with one. I said, it's the elevation of sensitivity over truth, which seems like what it still is.
The elevation of sensitiveness over truth. That's politically correctness at its extreme. And when you don't know your purpose, when you don't have a clear direction of in order which the way you should be going, and you don't have the confidence, that will come into play. You'll be hypersensitive to things that don't matter.
Where did it come from? How did we get to this place where we're so fragile? The safe space people.
Oh, I think that you can pretty much blame it on the universities.
Wow.
I think that they've pursued, especially in the humanities and in the social sciences as well, they've pursued a policy of a radical leftist policy with an overlay of postmodernism.
That's interesting, don't you think? People these days are conditioned to be careful and play it safe. And Jordan Peterson is saying it comes from the universities. It comes, well, I would say it comes from generally the education system. I would love to know what you think of that one. We've all got the comfort zone. We're fighting to stay, even though it's not comfortable. Then there's the uncomfortable zone, which is out of there, right? You've got to go through the uncomfortable zone to get to the unknown, where is outside of there. But what happens? A lot of people get to the uncomfortable zone, do a U and head back for the comfort zone and play the victim. They can tell you all the reasons why they're not going to go after their purpose, their mission, the dream that lives in them. See how that's going to work out though.
Well, there's also this idea that's promoted by the people who are protecting those who are easily offended, that the way to make people secure is to protect them from things that they don't want to encounter. And there isn't a clinician, like I'm a trained clinical psychologist, and there isn't a clinician in the country who's worth his or her salt that would ever make that claim. Because you don't make people, first of all, it's hard to make people safe because life is seriously not safe.
Yes.
And the way that you make people resilient is by exposing them to things that they're afraid of and that make them uncomfortable voluntarily, but you use exposure.
Right.
Something that I've been saying for a very long time. The warrior is made through hardship. Jordan talks about you don't make people safe by wrapping them in bubble wrap. You know, to just make them soft and comfortable. That's not how you make people safe. And particularly when it comes to children. I mean, anybody, but it starts in childhood. We need to teach our children how to come back, how to get up again. And particularly when it comes to hardships, you know, I love it. I got taught that in particular a couple of different ways through my parents, etc. Through resurrecting businesses, through boxing, through getting beaten up, through going by stretching myself and going after goals that were out of my reach. That's how I got stronger, fitter, smarter, how I developed more skills, not by being careful and playing it safe. And that's exactly what they're talking about right there.
And so, like, if you over-coddle people, if you protect them from everything that's sharp, you make them dull and stupid and narcissistic, and it's a really bad idea.
So you do know America.
Good.
I'd love to see those hands would go up. Would you like your children to be dumb and stupid? Of course not. So I believe the key to raising great people, great children, is by teaching them how to think for themselves, not doing everything for them. So by setting goals, by having a vision that they need to grow into, will create resilience, because it's not going to work the first time, second, third or fourth. They've got to develop themselves. That's the best thing you can do as a father.
Masturbation and pornography are potently tapping into the dopamine system and can undermine the very processes of what I consider healthy processes of finding a mate, dating, communication, eventually, if it's appropriate, sexual interaction, etc.
It's undermining pair bonding.
And pair bonding.
So here's a question: if you're seeking sexual release through pornography and you go through the whole cycle and you get a prolactin release, do you bond with yourself?
The biology explains it as what's left there is a kind of an open loop, a kind of an emptiness, right? Because bonding with the self is a complicated notion. I mean, there's a healthy version of that, of course, loving oneself. And
I think this is a big issue, this pornography, particularly when men don't know how to do the work. They don't know how to do the hard work to develop themselves, to be attractive to women. We don't know how to do that. That takes a tremendous amount of self-discovery. Who is the man I really want to become? Who is the man that's attractive to other people? But if it's just instant gratification through pornography, we will never develop that. I've 5 daughters, so I've had to really get a handle on this. I don't want them to end up with a whacker, right? An undeveloped man. So they're going to measure me to every other man, okay? I've been with my wife since we were teenagers. Nobody taught me this stuff, so I've had to go on the journey to do this. But it's every man's responsibility. We don't want to play the victim and say, no one taught me. No. If you're looking to a screen, to pornography, to fill your cup, the ramifications of that will go way past your lifetime. You know, a lot of men are not getting their needs met in a marriage. Well, I say, listen, it's your fault. You need to change it. You need to step up, because there's a legacy that's going to be created from you going down that pornography, opposed to making your woman your queen.
I would say to young men who are irritated at women is, if you're irritated at women, you know, as a class of creature, there's something wrong with you, because they're right. You're wrong. If they're not picking you, it's because they're right.
Yeah.
I know that's a terrible thing to say, but what you have to understand is that, what do you expect from women? If you got pregnant because you had sex, you'd be pretty damn choosy too. So,
Yeah.
you know, clue in a bit. And then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not. Like, have you paid attention to how you dress? Do you have a plan?
There's no substitute being a gentleman, becoming a gentleman. There is no substitute. So many men I've seen go through our masculine journey, our man alive experience, that think if they get the right job, the right bank account, the right car, the right house, then I'll be attractive. And guess what? They get the right woman, right? But they're not the right man. They've got all these things to try and compensate for their poor masculine journey that they've gone on. Hey, it's up to you. If your marriage, if getting the woman of your dreams is going to work, it's going to be because of you.
You know, we call somebody what they want to be called in our society. For instance, I don't call somebody Julie if they prefer to be called Jordan. That's just basic human courtesy. Here's a great little tip for people who are despairing at the possibility of remembering all those pronouns. What I do is just program in the pronoun next to the person's name in my smartphone. So whenever I'm out and about and I've forgotten whether one of my trans friends uses ze or zer or they or them or something else, I just look it up and it's really super easy. One thing I'd like you to really look at in regard to this controversy is to watch out for...
This is insane. We've got this person, Pete, who's actually a woman, but actually goes under, it doesn't want to be a gender, is coming up with these great solutions to these confused people. Enabling this confusion. This is real life, real time. We've actually got a man in Canada going through our Man Alive experience, and he was telling me just the other day that in the school that his son goes to, there's children there that are identifying as dogs and cats, and his son barked, woof woof, barked at one of these dogs, and his son got suspended for barking. I don't know how that dog's meant to communicate, how he's meant to communicate, but is this not insane? And it's been said many times that what one generation will accept, the next generation will abuse. And that's exactly what's going on here. I believe this is happening because men are not speaking up and saying this is absolute rubbish and there needs to be a stop put to this. What is actually insane, how this insanity is being made legal, that in New York, 31 genders. 31 genders. I don't know, like, it leaves me speechless to even say that that's actually a law. How do we even educate our children on that? Like, why would we even educate our children? You know, if you've been born with a set of nuts, you're a boy. If you've been born with a vagina, you're a girl. There's enough hardship in front of our children, let alone putting that rubbish on our children. For goodness sake. I've got 5 daughters and 2 sons. We've got to protect our children from this. We've got to shield them and teach them how to think for themselves and not let confused people like Pete, who doesn't want to be a gender. How can you not want to be a gender? Like, it's insanity. Leave me a comment and tell me what you think about this.